Please welcome Rabbi Jacobson.
Good evening. I told him he stole my joke. Okay, we'll come up with it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Rabbi Jacobson, your entire team and family for hosting a beautiful evening. Hopefully we can honor and celebrate the Rebbe and his contributions to all of us. So, the biggest question that I get, especially recently, really every time around this time of the year, when we honor the Yahrzeit, the day of the passing, the third of Tammuz, Gimel Tammuz, of the Rebbe, the question, and I just got it last week, a journalist called me, as he does every year, with the same question. I give him the same answer, but it doesn't seem to. How is it possible? How is it possible? There's no company on earth that can function without a CEO. And most companies can't function even with a CEO, you should add. But here you have Chabad, Lubavitcher, not just functioning, but not just surviving, but thriving. 31 years from that fateful day, growing, blossoming, spreading more than ever without a CEO, in a physical format. So I'm not sure what each of you would answer. You're all here this evening, so clearly something has impacted you. So I'll try to answer that question through this evening. Well, I'll say the following. I remember it was 2 days after Gimel Tammuz was Sunday, like it was this year, Saturday night, Sunday. On Tuesday night, I was invited, this is 1994, we're talking about 31 years ago. I was invited to be on Larry King. Remember him? You're all old enough to remember? Good. Okay. We had Larry King live on CNN, and they wanted to do a piece on the Rebbe. And it's a long story how they got to meet, but they did. They actually asked me to find another Chabad rabbi. I suggested Rabbi Rabbi who recently passed from Florida, from the Hartford. And they always have to have a contrarian, so they had another individual who was like so-called the opposition. You can call it that. And one of the different questions, the one that remains with me, remember, this is all live TV. You have no idea what's going to be asked, and you have to give answers that are less than 20 seconds. So it's all very quick. And you're not even sitting with a human being. You're sitting in a studio in New York, because Larry King was in Washington. And all you see are cameras that are moving around automatically, mechanically. So it's quite disorienting, especially if you never did it before. So the question he asked me was, he said, why is it that Chabad, I understand why Chabad is grieving, is essentially descendants from the Romans, it's a Christian country. Netanyahu is a Jewish prime minister. Persia and the Arab world was conquered by conquered Babylon, which destroyed the first temple. We're standing in this historic moment where all the coordinates are intersecting, and Israel is going on a major offensive to eliminate the enemy of Persia of old, which is called Iran. I still am quite stunned by just these circumstances, and I realize behind the scenes that nobody really sees and happening things that, we see, of course, the success of the mission, the miraculous success of literally not one plane and not one member of the Tzahal being hurt in this operation in Iran, 1,400 miles away from Israel. Yes, we've had casualties, and even one is more than enough. But you can't deny the miracle. But behind the scenes, the Prime Minister of Israel that's not known for wearing a tallit and praying at the wall, is literally praying at the wall a few hours and inspired by a non-Jewish president called Millet, who was inspired by the Rebbe and by the Torah, as indicated in the picture that he gave and his life, all coming together here. So you tell me what the lesson of that is. Now we don't really know what's happening. That's what we have to recognize. That there is an invisible hand called divine providence behind the scenes. And as we speak right now, protecting Israel, protecting these people, protecting all of us. So we may be 7,000 miles away, or whatever the amount is, but there's a bigger secret cosmic choreography happening. And that's one of the things the Rebbe spoke about so often when he spoke about Israel and dealing with our enemies and dealing with the world, was to recognize that there's this invisible hand. And I saw it with my own eyes. So coming here, I felt there's no way that I cannot share this with you, because I saw it literally. And yes, it's interesting that President Millet, a non-Jewish one, is inspiring the Jewish ministers and prime ministers. And I have no doubt that this articulation of faith is coming from that deeper place. So that's a fresh regard, just the last few weeks of events that have affected us all. And all going back to a man that is, as I said, 31 years not here physically, but the impact is there. So, with that said, I want to, as I said earlier, let's draw this into our lives. You know, if someone were to ask a question, and I always challenge myself this way, and I hope everybody challenges themselves this way. It's one thing, a chassid, meaning a disciple, a student, a follower of the Rebbe, that he admires the Rebbe, that's obvious, he grew up with it. But if someone were to challenge any one of you here, challenge Rabbi Jacobson, for example, or challenge myself, tell me in simple English, without using any Hebrew words, and without just blind faith, what are the Rebbe's contributions to our lives? What contribution did the Rebbe make that no one ever made before? And I was challenged many times with this question, so that's why I'm asking it. I remember someone saying, Einstein is Jewish. Albert Einstein, we all know the contribution he made. He produced the special theory of relativity, or the theory of relativity changed physics and so on. Tell me something equivalent that you could say a revolution that they ever created. And not just preaching to the converted, what they call hagiography, that people already, what about someone who never heard of the Rebbe before? And there are a few people on earth still left that way. You know that, right? Around 1.7 billion Chinese and around 1.6 billion Indian. There are probably a few that do, I guess, Dell or other computer customer service. So once in a while, Chabad they call them. But that's as far as their exposure goes. And there are Chabad houses in these places. But still, so how would you explain to a skeptic contribution? Tell me the contribution. A great Torah scholar. There have been Torah scholars here from the time of Moses, thousands of years. A leader, charismatic. I mean, a lot of things have been said, and I'm not in any way suggesting that whatever has been said is not legitimate. You know, some people will say that after the Holocaust, and after World War II, the Jewish people gave up and were resigned, after 1/3 of our people were decimated, and the rest were completely traumatized, that the Rebbe came and revived the spirit of the Jewish nation. No one can deny that. But I want to take it even more personal. That's what you could say Acclaimed. What about you and I? Our children, our grandchildren. So I'd like to quantify it, and due to limitations of time, I can go on all night, but I want to keep it a little concentrated, and I'll try to lay out 5 key points, if I may. I would say 5 major contributions. I've been looking for an acronym, and I'm always looking for so good. I have an acronym, but it's very corny. Sorry. So if someone comes up with a good one, we'll give you, what can we give, a free teddy bear. What do you have to offer? Any nice gifts? A free safer, a free book. Okay. Anyway, so the corny acronym that I came up with is MIPOD, MIPOD. Again, corny. Don't pay any attention to it. It's just to make it easier to remember. sometimes weird acronyms are helpful because you just remember, like, so strange, iPod, you know. So iPod with an M in the front. So 5 key points that I believe really capture in very simple English the Rebbe's unique contributions, not just 30 years ago and 60 years ago, but now. Something we can teach our children. So we can go away this evening and saying, interesting, I want to get to know this Rebbe. He has something to say that's relevant to me. Here's where I think the joke about how you able to, I'm not going to use that joke because that was you. Just for the record, this is where we go. So, the 5 things, I'll first lay them out, just the titles, and then I'll elaborate a bit. Are we doing all right? Good? Jacobson is watching me like a hawk to make sure I say everything that's correct according to the party line.
Don't worry, it's okay. Don't worry.
From time to time, I sometimes go off the reservation. The Rebbe taught us that, what you have to do. You can't always do the expected. You have to sometimes do the unexpected. So the 5 things are, in English, MIPOD, mission, initiative, persistence, opportunities, and the top D, destination. And let me tell you why I'm putting it in those words. If I may, I'll share a little anecdote. It's more than an anecdote, it's a true story. Years ago, so my career, my claim to fame was, as was mentioned for years, my work was to remember literally hours and hours of the Rebbe's talks that were delivered on Shabbat and holidays. There were no notes, no recordings. So we had to remember with our good old minds. We're not talking about the bullets, sometimes 5, 6, 7 hours of the Rebbe's talks, which would be a few hundred pages at times. 100 pages. For every, just for the record, the Rebbe's pace of speaking when it was transcribed was, for every hour, yields 20 pages, 8.5 by 11 double spaced. So 5 hours is 100 pages. 7 hours, 140 pages. And we were pretty good. We remember almost verbatim. That was the work I did. And then the second part of the work was to document it for posterity to be published. So many of the Rebbe's talks are a result of a small group called Chazim. I was one of them. You may have heard Rabbi Khan was a senior, veteran from the beginning, from 1950. And that's what we did. But as the years rolled on, I began at the end of the week giving a class. Just have someone introduce me to someone, and it ended up being people from the arts and entertainment industry. Okay? Different rock and rollers, artists, all sorts. Many Jews, some non-Jews. They were all very spiritual, but hardly traditional in the Jewish sense of the word. So if you ask them where their spirituality came from, they would say from Zen Buddhism, if I may use that term here for this show. Zen Buddhism, and the thing that is not an acronym for Let's Start Out. LSD, okay? It's not that. LSD. That's where they found their spirituality. And here we are, you guys studied, grew up in the yeshiva system, speaking to these guys, these free spirits, bohemians of our time, and we had a common language because we were all talking about the spiritual, about the soul. And I realized after a while that I was at a disadvantage because as a communicator, you're always very sensitive to who you're speaking to. Because it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And different audiences, certain words, to me are innocuous and meaningless, but they can trigger something in you because it's the word your mother used every time she went ballistic or something. So I wanted to neutralize, since I'm not projecting the neutral image. Here I am, a bear in a yarmulke. It was a blacker bear then. I had a little more hair on the top of my head. But bottom line is, I don't know what image or stereotype I'm evoking in the people attending. It's definitely not neutral. I may be reminding one person of an angry grandfather that shrugged into the synagogue in Yom Kippur against his will when he wanted to go to the game. Or maybe evoking someone else who had a Hebrew school teacher that taught him hollow Hebrew bar mitzvah or bar mitzvah lessons. Or maybe I'm reminding someone of more memory of a grandfather or grandmother, who knows? So I tried an experiment, and it's really a lesson in life. What happened? An experiment that I would not use any loaded words. No Hebrew, no Torah language, no religious language. Not use God, I won't use mitzvahs, I won't use Torah, I won't use Mashiach. No words like that. That way, there's no word that may be misunderstood or stereotyped by certain myths, common myths, and misconceptions. So I created my own language. Instead of God, I use words like higher reality, the essence of it all. If it was a particularly New Age group, I'd use words like non-deterministic layers of unconscious energy or something like that. If it was, no, instead of Torah, I use the word blueprint or roadmap. Instead of mitzvahs, connections. And instead of Mashiach, Geula, I use the word destination. And here I was waxing eloquent and pontificating on connecting to the essence of it all by following the blueprint and making the connections to the point that we create seamless fusion between form and function, body and soul, the deterministic and the indeterministic, quantum, microscopic and the macroscopic, in one seamless flow of harmony of the inner and the outer. That was just and I have to tell you, people listening like never before, they went, wow, so interesting. And week after week, I went on this on my own language. Now, all the words actually are accurate translations, they just didn't use the Hebrew. After around 3-4 weeks, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember Jay and the Americans. It was a group in the 60s. Okay? Good memory. So a guy called Kenny Vance, he was part of that group, comes over to me before the class and says, you know, everyone loves this class. It's like great stuff that you've been sharing these last few weeks. I just want to know, are you talking about God? I said, yes, but shh, don't spoil it for others. You know? But already the cat was out of the bag, that's it. You know, the secret was revealed. But the point, the experiment worked a lot better than I expected. Because I realized it's not really the words you use, it's what people take. What does it mean? What does the word God even mean? Besides supreme creator, first cause, if we passed out notes right now and asked you, what's God? No two people would write the same thing. And yet we argue about it. And I love the story that I use it in Torah meeting flat that Yusuf Bardicheva once told a self-proclaimed atheist. He said, God, you don't believe, and I also don't believe. Think about that. So before we disagree, first let's define the term. If I was told that God is this guy sitting on a throne in heaven with a long white beard ready to strike us with lightning when we misbehave, I would call myself an atheist. So there we go. Maybe we just agree. Just maybe redefine. And it's something that's so obvious, but also so common, that we just use words and we think, you mean what I mean. Who says that? Maybe not. And hence, I defined those 5 items, and I go back to that now, using simple English, without any Hebrew words. So it makes it easier to relate to, and make it more relevant, and personal. So let me go over those 5 items, briefly at least. As I said, mission, initiative, persistence, opportunities, and destination. Let's start with mission. Okay. Everyone knows you don't need to be Business 101. You don't need to be a business major to know that the first rule in any building, any entity, any organization, business, operation, you need to have, first and foremost, a mission statement. There's no mission, there's no objective. What are you building? Why would anyone invest with you? How do we measure success? You have to have a mission. So if someone were to come to you and say, hey, I'd like you to invest $100, let alone $1 million or more. And you say to them, what's the mission of your company? They say, it's too complicated. If you have a few months, I'll share it with you. Or I have several options of missions. Or we haven't developed one yet. What do you think? You're going to give them one penny? Because it's impossible to be successful and efficient. Even if you have all the money in the world, you'll be wasting a lot of it because what's the objective? You know, Google's mission statement, just for the record, is to organize all the information in the world and make it readily accessible. Last I saw, maybe they've changed it, but I think that's it. Microsoft, at least when it was founded, was a computer in every home and in every office. Interesting. These mission statements take a lot of money, a lot of time to develop. They sound simple, but they're unique, and they're managed, and they're measurable, and they're achievable. So if someone were to say to you now, what is your personal mission statement in life? You know what you're going to get? Exactly that first answer. Many people, I've tested this, will say, my mission is to be happy. My mission is to make a lot of money. My mission is to bring up a happy family and healthy children, Jewish education. Whatever it is that you, all beautiful things, do you think any of them qualify as a mission? No. That would be like saying a company's mission is to make everybody happy. Or to make money. Every company's supposed to be making money. How are you going to do it in a way that someone else is not doing it? So it has to be unique, it has to be measurable, and so on. I probably asked, I don't know, I can't even count, hundreds of thousands of people for sure, over the years of my talks. I said, what is your personal mission statement? I rarely found someone that had an answer. It's one of those, money, I have money, and I can do things, etc. So we have 8 billion people on this planet. Many don't even know they should have a mission, let alone what the mission is. So I tell you, the first greatest gift that the Rebbe gave us, we made it very clear from the outset. Everything starts with a mission. I want me to give you a little secret what the Hebrew word for that is, shlichus. Everyone is a shlich. Everyone is an ambassador of God that came to this world, not by accident. He was sent here for a purpose. You may not know what it is initially, but it's your mission is to find your mission. And then use all your skills and resources and opportunities, everything in your life to fulfill that mission. When I first discovered that as a younger man, I said, wow, here we are. We're sitting in the presence of a human being that was sent here by God, the Rebbe, and it's telling us you have a mission, and your mission is unique to you. It's indispensable, but you have to accomplish no one but you can accomplish. I'm talking about everyone right here in this room, and for that matter, everyone on this earth. Have you heard this message recently? You think there's any advertiser going to put up a sign on the billboard saying, birth is God saying you matter, that you have an indispensable mission? You know why? Because they're not going to make money on it. All advertising is based on if you buy this, if you wear this, if you travel here, you smoke that, you look like this, then you'll be valuable, so go ahead and buy the product. This message is free. This is inherent to your existence, the mere fact that you exist. You don't need to buy anything. It's right in here that you have a unique mission in this world. Now you can say, did anyone ever say it before the Rebbe? Yes. First of all, Judaism is based on that. But the Rebbe saw the importance of emphasizing it in a world where we become increasingly negligible, because yes, we have all the technology in the world, but I think people don't feel that they're valuable. I've asked many people, do you think you really matter? On a cosmic level, I don't mean just to your family and to your friends. Or to rephrase it, if you were never born, would it make any difference to anyone? Remember, there's no tragedy because no one's waiting for you. Once you're here, of course we justify our existence. And the Rebbe, based on Torah, comes and tells us that every person has a mission to fulfill, and frankly, no one else can do it but you. And if you don't do it, something is missing from the whole picture. Period. And this has nothing to do how religious or not religious you are, whether you're a kippah-wearing Jew, or for that matter, a non-Jew. Everyone has a mission. And if you look at all the Rebbe's talks, and whenever he met anyone by dollars in private audience, always ask them, so how are you fulfilling your calling? You're a college professor, you're a computer programmer, you're an author, you're a musician. How are you using your skills and your opportunities to make the world a better place? So that's number one, mission. The second is the I, initiative. Initiative. Now this is a very fascinating one, and it's really a lesson in all education. People ask, how do you inspire people? How do you educate people? So you have all kinds of books and best-selling books, and I can tell you as an author, if it's best-selling, it means the previous bestseller didn't do the job. Because if you already have a book that puts you 5 secrets to love, why do you need another one? So that's just a little secret in there. Goes to the bookstore and where's the self-help section? So the manager says, if I told you, it would defeat the purpose. Okay, so, some book jokes, fine. Let's get back to initiative. So what's the secret to true inspiration? And here again, let's turn to the Rebbe. Here's a man that's physically not here on this earth, 31 years. And if you count from the time he had a stroke, tragic stroke, 33 years. And yet he has more impact on people than many people that are walking this earth with all the money in the world, and so on. So what's the secret of impact like that? Well, it comes down to a thing called teaching someone not what to think, but how to think. We call it methodology. You can teach someone all the answers to all the questions in life. But it's not as powerful as teaching them how to find answers. Or like they say, instead of giving you the fish, I'll teach you how to fish. Because then even the teacher is not there physically, he's taught you a methodology. In Hasidic terminology, there's a concept that the teacher teaches the student how. So even if the teacher is not there, the student himself becomes like a teacher. In other words, it doesn't just end up one person is giving and the next one is receiving. We all become teachers. You want to inspire someone? Empower them. Don't just teach them what's right and wrong. Empower them that even when they're standing, so to speak, on their own feet, and no one's there around them, they know what to do. There are many people that have a lot of data, a lot of information. What do they say about computers? They say, is it male or female? So one of the arguments that it's male, the women argue at least, they say because like a computer, a man has a lot of data, but he's clueless. You know? That was meant to be a joke, right? Maybe it was an insult. Sorry. No, the women would laugh, but okay, fine. You're very courteous. Fine. Whenever a joke is said and no one laughs, here's the trick. Tell the people, okay, next time I won't use it. So you always learn. I think you got it. There's just some jokes called the laughter, some don't. But let me not digress. Let's go back to our topic. So a critical component in the Rebbe's form of teaching and educating was not just to transfer data and information and knowledge, including Torah knowledge, but it was to demand and expect initiative. He wanted the students to take initiative. The Rebbe had a favorite, one of his favorite quotes was from the chapter in the Torah we read a few weeks ago, Baalotcha. It says that the high priest, when he will raise the flames, that's the verse. So the Rashi, the commentary asks, what do you mean raise the flames? You don't raise flames. You ignite flames. You kindle them. You light them. And he says that the mitzvah was not just to light the flame, but to make sure it rises on its own. You know, it takes a split second when you light a flame till it catches. So the mitzvah was that the priest had to wait till the flame caught completely, and then go on to the next flame. So the Rebbe asked the question many times, why is it so important to change the entire word of the Torah? And let's say the flame burns out, so you'll go back and relight it. He said, no, because that's the foundation of all of life. All education, all inspiration, all impact is about lighting flames. We're lighting each other's flames. Every soul is like a flame. Every mitzvah is compared to their mitzvah, the Torah, to a flame. And the Torah is telling us, it's not enough to light flames. You have to make sure the Lord burns on its own, that the person owns and is empowered. So even when you're not there to light it, he has, or she has, the ability to rise on his own, or her own. I can't underscore how important this is in education, in inspiring. Now it's easier to control people by just telling them what to do, but it's far more effective and far more sustainable if you don't just tell them what to do, but you give them the tools to figure it out on their own. So is there a risk? There's always risk. But that independence creates something that is perpetual and continues on. Every shluch of the Rebbe, wherever they may be, see the Rebbe as their guide. But they also know that the Rebbe empowered me to have to solve problems on location. We try to do so based on the guidance we receive. But you can't always run back. Even before the Rebbe, when the Rebbe was here physically, many times you ask him a question, he says, ask people on location, ask advice, because that's what the Rebbe wanted you to figure it out. I'm giving you the power to figure it out, but he wanted to empower. So that's initiative. The third is the P, persistence. So I'll use my I use myself as an example. So I was a little child. I was 10 years old. And grew up in Crown Heights, USA. How many of you have been to Crown Heights? Only one person. Okay. So I grew up my whole life as a Crown Heights. So of course I grew up with the Rebbe. It was constant presence in my life. Thank you. Is that the spike or is that the word? I can remember he gave a drink once to the speaker. He said, "How incoherent as it is, I don't need more." So it was Sukkot. The year was 1966. It was already the New Year, Chabad. That Sukkot did not stop raining from first day Sukkot till the end. I think it rained the whole time. And it was a real, one of those New York rains. I don't know about Hartford, but it's probably similar. It was a miserable rain. And you know, Chabad, they eat a meal in a sukkah even if it's raining. They don't sleep in a sukkah even if it's not raining. That's for another time. But they eat in the sukkah when it rains. The Rebbe, his custom was that he fabrained. He had a fabrained twice on sukkahs. One was on Shabbos, Chabad, and one was the second night of sukkahs. I think this was the day of Shabbos. So I was a little kid. I'm coming to 770. Rebbe's reading a fabrained. And I come, the sukkah is soaking wet. You have to remember also the schach, which is the cover on the sukkah. We call schach. So Chabad, the schach is very thick. So at the beginning of a drizzle, that's perfect. But once it gets saturated, it becomes like these globs of water that make life miserable. So here I am, the sukkah is completely saturated. The Rebbe is speaking up front. I couldn't hear. Oblivious to the rain. Everybody there was there out of respect to the Rebbe. Later I heard that the discourse, the Hasidic discourse the Rebbe delivered was called the Shafta Ma'im, which means we draw water with joy, which is a Sukkot theme, but it didn't, no one missed the point that even though it's pouring rain, and the Rebbe was going on. Here's this little child. I couldn't understand or hear even what the Rebbe was saying, but here's the impression that left on me till this day. Now, I don't know if I had the words to articulate it when I was a kid, but now when I think back, you know, the Rebbe did not have to fabrain that day. There's a thing called in America a rain date, right? Also, the Rebbe was not eating a meal. I mean, the same l'chaim, they could have easily fabrained inside the building and not say l'chaim. That's happened. And yet, the Rebbe would not stop his custom. It was a custom. It's not a mitzvah to fabrain of sukkahs in the rain. But since this is what we do every year, it doesn't matter, rain, shine, snow, no matter what, there's going to be a fabrain. That's what impression left in my mind. And I never forgot it. I thought to myself, that's called immortality, if you wish. Like the waves of an ocean. They never sleep. They're relentless. Like drops of water. And the Rebbe understood the power of persistence. It's not about how intense you do something, but the consistency. You never stop. And what left in my mind was that when you start something good, never stop. When the class I mentioned before that began around 1981 was a Wednesday night class. Till this day, what is it now? We're talking about 44 years. I've never stopped this class once. And I have plenty of excuses. You're under the weather, over the weather, blizzards. New York has its weather issues. 9/11. I remember 9/11 was Tuesday. My class was scheduled Wednesday night. How do you get from Brooklyn to Manhattan when the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge and the Williamsburg Bridge are all closed to the attack? And I knew I have to do this class. And it was all back to the rain that I saw the Rebbe sitting in the rain years earlier. So what do? So first I considered swimming across the East River, but then I thought it was not such a great idea. That would really be a media event, you know? This Jewish guy swimming right after 9/11. Anyway, I found out that the Midtown Tunnel was open. And there was no traffic because nobody was driving. So I went all the way through Queens. It took me 15 minutes faster than ever because there was no traffic at all. There were no cars. So I went through the Midtown Tunnel, which was open. I ended up in my class at the Upper West Side of Manhattan. And lo and behold, usually around 90, 100 people came. There were 300, 400 people there. Because everybody, if you remember the mood, was everyone was looking to commune, to connect. So fine, I could have not come. I had plenty of excuses. But it was that thing that was planted in me. There's enough bad things that we do. Good things you do, make sure you never stop. Persistence. Persistence. The Rebbe started his leadership in 1950. You know how many people were in the room when he began? A handful. And yet he had his persistence. And he had to deal with people that were not easy to deal with. You agree? Yeah. People who, whatever, mediocre, lazy refugees, to be honest. They were all broken people. My parents came from Russia, as did so many others, didn't know the language, had no parnasa, no livelihood. Broken, spirited people. And yet the Rebbe's persistence, that he would not give up, consistent, again and again. I can't tell you how many things the Rebbe must have repeated. How do you have such patience? So persistence is the third thing. And I'll go now to the fourth, is the O for opportunities. Another story, very powerful story. If you think about every one of these is absolutely relevant to our lives. You implement mission, I'll go over it at the end. Mission so far, initiative and persistence. You teach that to your children. These are the secrets to success, real success, lasting success. Opportunities. My father was a journalist. I grew up and knew him well. He passed away 20 years ago. When he had diabetes, he suffered from different things. In the 1989, he ended up in the hospital with a mini stroke on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The oldest of 5 children. So it was the day before Yom Kippur. You know the custom called lekach, sweet honey cake. It's a custom to give for a sweet new year. To give sweet honey cake. Parents, the Rebbe had that custom. In those years, he wasn't giving it to everyone, he was giving it to individuals. I get a call from the Rebbe's secretary, the Rebbe wants to see me. I come running, it's the day before Yom Kippur, a pretty busy day. The Rebbe comes out outside his inner chamber to the outer chamber, what Chassidim call Ganei Natachta, and the Rebbe has 2 pieces of honey cake and he gives them to me. In Yiddish, he says, these are for your father. Tell him you should have a healthy, sweet year. And then the Rebbe smiles. I'll say it in Yiddish and then I'll translate. The Rebbe says to me, Zog dem Taten, tell your father, als wenn verendigt in the Schlichtes, auf was mit dem Geschick dort, that man from dort nach Israel. And when he finishes the mission for which he was sent to the hospital, he'll be released. My father was in NYU, in the town, in the 30s, 20, whatever. So I immediately went flying, drove to the hospital. I brought my father the honey cake. I told him exactly what the Rebbe said. My mother started running around. My father called her back and said, it's my mission, not yours, you're a guest. And my father did what he did. I don't know. My father knew, understood. I don't know exactly what he did. But just to show you how serious this point was, after Yom Kippur, the day after Chabad, the Rebbe's chief of staff comes to visit my father. He was already an older man, he was weak. And he says, the Rebbe wants to know, he sent me to find out, did you finish your mission yet? Okay. Now think about this. Who goes to the hospital to fulfill mission? My father would rather not be in the hospital, rather be home Rosh Hashanah. But the Rebbe did not see us, or anyone, as a victim. If you're there, it's because God wants you there, because you have to accomplish something that you have to accomplish. He couldn't get you any other way, so he got you through a mini stroke. That's how he looked at it. Obviously, still you have to find healing, perhaps dismissing or minimizing that. But the Rebbe looked at a bigger picture. You're there, that means you have to meet something. Something has to happen, a positive thing. And obviously, a few days later, my father came home, so clearly he fulfilled his mission. Now, such a perspective you don't hear every day. You know, negative things happen to all of us. We have setbacks, we have challenges, health, physical, psychological, emotional. But to be able to look at your life and look at others, that you're never a victim, there's some deeper plan. May not be pleasant, but there's something that you need to accomplish. It just gives a whole other attitude. I heard from Rabbi Yisrael Meir Lau. He was a former chief rabbi of Israel. I heard this straight from him. In 1974, he came to New York. He was a rabbi of Natalia then, a city in the coast of Israel. And it was right after the Yom Kippur War. And the mood in Israel was not good. Because in contrast to the Six-Day War with euphoria and the miracles and so on, in the Kippur War, mistakes were made. It was arrogant. There were unfortunately a lot of casualties relative for a country like Israel. So the Rebbe asked Rabbi Lau, what's the mood in Israel like? So he said, I think in Yiddish, he said to them, people are very down. And they're all wondering, in Hebrew, what's going to be? What's wird sein? What's going to be? The way he told me the story is that the Rebbe grabbed his wrist, Rabbi Lau's wrist, like that, and said, Rabbi Lau, bei Ihnen fragt man nicht, was wird sein, man fragt, was geht mit tun. By Jews, we don't ask what will be, we ask what are we going to do about it. Not ma yeh, ma naseh. Not what will be, what are we going to do? You see the difference? It's not semantics. A victim says, what's going to be? You throw your arms up in desperation and you hope for some salvation. But really that was just not acceptable. Obviously we need God's help and we want God's prayer, we pray to God, we want God's blessings and so on. But God blesses you with faculties, with intelligence, with emotions. Figure it out. If you need support, find other people that will help you. That's what he was telling my father and he told so many others. Everything is an opportunity. In the Hasidic terminology, everything is a spiritual opportunity. There are spiritual sparks everywhere. Wherever you go, wherever you travel, now starts to travel soon. God leads the footsteps of a person. He wants you somewhere. You may not want to go because you're not interested in spiritual mission. So God finds concocts some plan that you go for business, vacation. They say it's a really nice place, there's beautiful restaurants, beaches. So meanwhile you're there, and now the real action happens. So you have to always be ready for the unexpected, for the spontaneous. Everywhere there's opportunities. Everything you ever looked at was a spiritual opportunity. How could it be transformed? If it's positive, great. But even if it seems like it's negative, there's always an opportunity. And finally, the fifth point is the D for destination, which I already gave away earlier. Destination is the final frontier. When we finish line. In our language, in Hebrew, and Torah language, it's called Mashiach. It's called Geula. Redemption. In the first discourse of the Rebbe, when he formally accepted leadership in 1951, on the 10th of Shvat, and he said the famous discourse, Vasa Legani, come to my garden, and he explained that the purpose of our existence, going back to the mission, is the destination. Is to finish the job that thousands of years of our grandparents, and great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents, an unbroken chain began, to finish the job and cross the finish line, and yes, usher in a new world order. The world of peace, of prosperity, or in the words of Isaiah the prophet, where there will no longer be evil and destruction, because the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. That's how Maimonides concludes his classic magnum opus. And we're not just bystanders. We are players in the game. We play a role in the unfolding drama. We all play a role. Those are almost a quote from the Rebbe, said hundreds and hundreds of times. So it's not going nowhere. When people say, why is Mashiach so important? Yes, we all know when we're suffering, we like the not suffering. We like peace. But even when things are good, because Mashiach represents the fulfillment and realization of the mission for which God created this world. And as long as that is not fulfilled, there's fundamentally something missing. Going back to the analogy I gave, imagine a company has a mission statement, and they have a goal, and they never achieve the goal. So it's all nice and good. But what's the final result? So the final result is something that's unfolding already, and the Rebbe's words, we just have to open our eyes. Did you ever think of this miracle, or we take it for granted? Here we are sitting in this room, and there are thousands of other Jews, millions of other Jews all over the world. We're not afraid of anybody standing outside right now, taking our names, and we may be arrested, like it was 80 years ago in Nazi Europe, or 100, 150 years ago. Go back 2-3 centuries. Everyone here, their parents and grandparents were living under the gun somewhere, either being expelled, discriminated against, killed, attacked, targeted, you name it. Here we are, most Jews today live in freedom. I'm not saying there's anti-Semitism, I know what's going on with it. But this type of freedom, our great-grandparents would think this is Messianic. Look at Israel. It's surrounded by enemies. You still have work to be done. But a renaissance of Jewish life, you just go there, just look in the streets, you say, just wonder where the Nazis are rolling in their graves when they see what the Jews have become. Or like the whole world is now in awe of what we did the last few weeks. Awe. They may not like us, but they cannot resist being in awe. A little country, smaller than the size of New Jersey, and the whole world is standing on the sidelines. And we're fighting their war, protecting them. America has to be given credit for its help, and so on, not taking away from that. But who carried the heavy weight? This is all America. I never had to suffer. My father would tell me how 24/7 they would tremble in fear. In the middle of the night, someone would knock on the door. You don't know who's going to be arrested and who's going to be shot. I can't even imagine living like that. And of course, going back to Nazi Europe and so on. So the Rebbe tells us, open your eyes, and you'll see these are patterns and trends leading to a better world. Is the story over? No. Until there is no crime at all, and no violence, and no war, and there's total harmony and peace, obviously the story is not finished. But we've moved a long way. So bottom line is, the final step is a destination to be achieved, and each of us plays a role in this process. So let me, like I said, I could go on. I'm just conclude with a personal story, and then just sum it up, and then take questions wherever you see fit. I was a bar mitzvah boy, and the year was 1969. I want to calculate my age. People like to do that. I'll tell you, I'm 17 years old with 51 years of experience. That's how I do it. So I was bar mitzvah in Crown Heights. As a little child, one of the great merits we had was when the Rebbe would dance Simchas Torah. We, the children, were down on the ground, around the table. The Rebbe would bend down, we would say the Torah, we would kiss it. It was a big thrill for us all. Okay, now I become bar mitzvah. Bar mitzvah, they stick a big hat in your head, and you think you're an adult, And I'm not sitting on the floor anymore with the children. I found one of my uncles. They had a place in the bleachers somewhere, 770, they would set up bleachers on the walls. I'm going to stand in one of these places with the so-called adults. Little did I know what adults are like, but okay. And there I am standing. The Rebbe finishes his first dance. The Rebbe would dance with his brother-in-law, the first and seventh dance of the Jacobson. And the Rebbe turns to my father, who got many, many the Rebbe would always gave him special attention, let's put it that way. My father, the Rebbe says to my father, where's your son? Referring to me. So my father proudly points to me standing in those bleachers. And the Rebbe points to the ground. He says, he used to dance with us down here below. I said, you are a spectator. He also became a spectator. That's how the Rebbe framed it. I became a spectator because I'm standing in the bleachers. So you can imagine, I was standing there being like an idiot. But then I realized, okay, I was told, and I went back down to the ground. I think that year, many of the students in the yeshiva who were standing in the bleachers came down to the ground because the Rebbe didn't like spectators. Even though we danced. So I guess the Rebbe maybe put a bug in me that I shouldn't be a spectator. So I share with you, my father would always say to me, he said there are three types of people. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who ask what happened. Okay? So I'm here to tell you, we've been blessed, first of all, as a Jewish people. Secondly, as students and disciples and Chassidim of the Rebbe, that we should be making things happen. If anything that has happened in the last few years since October 7th, and now especially in the last few weeks, is a tremendous global wake-up call. Everybody feels it. People coming out of the woodwork. There's something, we're not complacent. Everyone's on edge. There's uncertainty. What's going to happen tomorrow? And the takeaway message above all is that you have to be a proactive Jew. Everyone here has their sphere of influence. People you work with, co-workers, family, friends, even strangers. Don't be a bystander. Initiate something. And to to go back, realize that you're on a mission, a unique mission, unique to you. Take initiative, be persistent, see everything as an opportunity, all leading toward a destination where we will fuse heaven and earth in a total seamless connection and integration of a spiritual world in this physical planet. Or the words that the Rebbe used, that our mission concludes when we make a home for the divine in the lowest of worlds, the world in which we are now, a garden. And that's the blessing we all have, because we all have a gift. Our grandparents, our great-grandparents, if they're here, God bless them, but many of them are already gone. We are here. And we are the last leg carrying the baton in the long marathon that goes back thousands of years in an unbroken chain. No one else can say that. So it's a tremendous responsibility, but also a tremendous honor to be part of a nation that's been here for thousands of years and has the opportunity to lead the way proactively toward the Gula Amitis Vashlema. We will be reunited with all our loved ones, and we will see in this physical world the realization of God's plan, a world that's filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Thank you.